Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This time out, we have a special guest joining us. Drummer Antonio Sanchez was here for a recording workshop in Sweetwater's Studio A, and our Nick DiVirgilio had a chance to sit down and talk with him about all things drums, including his time with Pat Metheny and with his own band, the Migration Band. Check it out.
How you doing, everybody? Nick DiVirgilio here. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute, and I am very pleased to welcome to Sweetwater for the first time, Mr. Antonio Sanchez. How are you, man?
Good.
Great to see you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Nick. Great to be
What do you
here.
think of the place, your first time being here?
Man, I'm blown away. It's
pretty crazy, huh?
I had no idea. I mean, I've been a Sweetwater customer for a long time, but
Yeah.
I really had no idea.
Yeah, and it keeps expanding and growing, and the drum business is getting much bigger for us
I've
here
heard.
too, so it's a lot of good things happening.
Yeah, I mean, this theater is unbelievable, and I mean, they've been expanding from what I understand more and more, and
Yeah.
it's just mind-boggling, though.
Nice.
Just the sheer size is
Yeah.
just crazy.
Cool. Well, welcome here. Let's talk about your career, where you come from, and how long you've been playing drums, and all those kind of great things. You're a fantastic drummer, and I think you'll have a lot of good information to give to the people out there. So, you're from Mexico City, yeah?
Mexico City, born and raised there, and I started playing drums when I was 5.
Yeah.
And the way that started was my mother Susana has a brother Ignacio. Ignacio had a girlfriend Ana. Ana had a brother Fito, and Fito was a drummer.
Nice. Good
So
story.
one time we were hanging out at Anna's place, and I saw Fito's drum set, which was like a Vista Light kid.
Okay.
And that was it.
That was it.
That
You
was
were
it.
sold.
Hooked when I was 5. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and then, I just started playing to albums of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, it was stuff that my mom was listening to back then.
And did it come naturally to you? I mean, getting the rhythms, getting the kind of feel of drums at that age?
Yeah. I think I had, a fair amount of talent, and I just loved playing along to records. I mean, my first love was just like the music, that was made with the drums.
Sure.
And then little by little, I started getting more and more curious about the instrument itself,
Okay.
and started getting, videos and stuff. That back then there was no YouTube, of course, so to get videos in Mexico
was harder to find
really
stuff
hard,
back- yeah.
very hard. But as soon as you had your hands on one of those videos, you would just, watch it until it would break, basically. And that was great because you could really focus on stuff.
So what was your first drum kit then that was yours?
My first drum was a Tama Swing Star.
Okay.
Because I was, I still am a huge Stuart Copeland fan.
Okay.
And I was so into the Police, I wanted to play what Stuart Copeland played. And then I didn't even know endorsements existed or anything.
Sure.
I was in Mexico, and I had my rock bands and then I started doing my fusion bands, Latin jazz bands, and then I moved to the States to go to Berklee College of Music in 1993.
Okay.
And then that whole other phase of my life started.
Nice.
Yeah.
Berkeley. Okay. So, but one step back before that, you studied. Did you go to university or some kind of music school in Mexico before you came to the States? Yeah.
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with drums. I was actually in the conservatory studying classical piano.
Okay.
Yeah, and that I did half of the degree, which was 8 years. So I did 4.5 years of that.
Quite a long time.
Yeah, and then a year before that of just piano lessons, just to be able to get into the conservatory. But I was not really studying drums with anybody.
Okay.
I was really just checking out stuff, checking out videos, checking out albums, and I would just play along to records all the time and then play with my bands.
Sure. So when you went to Berkeley, did you get in as a drummer or as a piano player or both?
Yeah, I mean, when I got to Berkeley, my goal was to really dive in heavily into the drums.
Drums, okay.
Yeah, and really learn how to play jazz. I said, okay, if I'm going to go to the States, I want to learn, jazz, because a lot of people, that come from Latin America, they play their music.
Right.
Like I saw a lot of Cuban people playing Cuban music or Brazilians playing Brazilian music. I really wanted to learn jazz and then apply that to everything else that I was doing.
And were you a fan of that music before you got to Berkeley? I mean, were you?
I was more into Latin jazz fusion.
Okay.
But straight ahead, really, I started getting into it when I was at Berkeley.
Okay.
And, you know, meeting the right teachers and then hang out with the right students.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, going to check out concerts for the first time in my life because nobody ever came to Mexico back then.
Okay.
So having a couple of really good jazz clubs in Boston, then I would be able to see my heroes, you know, like a couple of feet away.
Yeah.
And that started changing my whole way of thinking.
Okay. All right, so after Berkeley, you went on to the New England Conservatory. Now, was that to study more drum set and jazz or to kind of expand on the whole thing?
Well, I'm going to be totally honest. Since I'm from Mexico, I was an international student at Berkeley. And then I was supposed to apply for my practical training, which allows you one more year after you graduate in order for just hang around and work if you want to. And I missed the deadline to apply for that.
Okay.
So basically, I was going to have to go back to Mexico because I had no visa. Okay. And there was this chance to go to New England Conservatory that were going to give me a really good scholarship. And I did not want to go to school anymore. I was, you know, I had been 4.5 years doing the conservatory in Mexico and then 4.5 years at Berkeley. So 9 years in a row, I was like, you know, I'm kind of done with school. But, you know, that opportunity came by and I was like, you know, it's great, I'll take it. So while I was there, I started studying with two guys that were not drummers. I thought, you know, I've been studying with drummers for a long time at Berkeley. And, you know, it's great to study with drummers. You have to do that. But they always give you a certain perspective, right? So what I wanted to do is get a perspective from a saxophone player or a piano player. What did they want from a drummer? Sure. You know, so I started studying with a great saxophone player. His name is George Garzón. And then Danilo Perez, who has been the piano player for Wayne Shorter for a long time now. And, you know, my evil plan was to, at some point, play with him because he was one of the only guys in Boston that was touring around. He was playing, he used to play with Dizzy Gillespie and with Paquito de Rivera. And at that point, he was doing a lot his band. Okay. So I thought, well, maybe if I get on his good side as a student, then, you know, we'll be able to, at some point, do something together. And I learned all his music without telling him. Sure. And then in the lessons, I would be like, hey, Danilo, so how does this song of yours go? And I would pretend I, you know, kind of knew it. And he's like, oh, you kind of know? Oh, cool. But I knew it perfectly. And for a year, without him even knowing it, he started training me for his gig. And then one day, his drummer couldn't do a few gigs, and then I was next in line. Nice. And that's how I started kind of sneaking in. That's good. You got to have a plan. That's the way you do it, yeah.
Awesome. So what was your technique, getting to the actual playing for a second here before we go on with the rest of your history, but how was your technique at that point? Were you always a traditional player? Did you have to change things up when you went to Berkeley into the conservatory after that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a good amount of technique when I got into Berkeley, but I really had no concept. Okay. You know, I had chops, but I didn't really know how to use them. Okay. So that was a rude awakening when I got to Berkeley, and I thought I was really good because I had chops. And then when I started, you know, really getting deeper into jazz, all my teachers were like, you know, that's not how you play jazz, you know. Yes, you have chops, but you are relying way too much on just licks, you know, that you're doing over and over again. So if you really want to improvise, you know, and be in real time with what's happening in the music, then you're gonna have to change your whole mentality. Okay. And that was, you know, a great discovery for me and how to really start improvising and making stuff up on the spot. Sure. with your fellow musicians. And to me, that's the most fun about jazz. You know, it's like having a conversation or having a soccer game. You know, sure. You're passing the ball around, you're talking to other people, it's a dialogue, you know, between 2 or 3 people, 4 people. So that to me is when it's the most fun to play.
Nice, awesome. All right, so then after that, kind of moving on, you decided to move to New York. Is that
right?
Is that the right progression?
Yeah, I didn't graduate from New England Conservatory because halfway through the program, which was supposed to be 2 years, I started playing with Danilo. And then Danilo recommended me also for Paquito de Rivera. And then I started touring international.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and then I got my work visa, my artist visa, which was what I wanted from the beginning. So, you know, since the touring opportunity was there, I didn't want to stay one more year in school. And then in 1999, after touring for a couple of years with Danilo and David Sanchez and guys that were more in the Latin jazz world, then I decided to move to New York, and it was a great way to do it because I had already some good gigs.
Sure.
You know, I didn't have to depend on the local scene of New York, so I kind of skipped that altogether,
Okay.
and I was lucky, you know, that I had work when I already got to New York.
Yeah, it's a tough grind in that city
Oh
sometimes.
yeah. It can be brutal.
Yeah. Well, cool. All right, so then progression-wise, where did the Pat Metheny thing lie in this progression of your career here?
Well, after playing with Danilo for a couple of years, and we were touring all the time back then. So we were in a jazz festival in Torino, in Italy. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was doing sound check with Danilo, and I knew, I mean, it was going to be a double bill with the Pat Metheny trio.
Okay.
And they were playing first, and then we were playing second. So I remember I was doing sound check, and I just felt this presence behind me while I was playing just by myself. And I turned around, and it was Pat, and he was like, you know, he just went like this, like, "Hi, I'm Pat." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, man, pleasure, blah, blah, blah." And then back then, I was doing a lot of stuff mixing jazz with Afro-Cuban percussion. I had like a flat timbale instead of a second tom.
Okay.
I had a set of bongos. I had a conga that I would be playing with my stick or with my hand sometimes. I had like, you know, 4 different cowbells, and I was doing the independence thing with the left foot on the clave and doing all these crazy things. So this is a really funny story because the promoter of that concert, who has been the promoter that Pat has been using in Italy for, you know, decades, told me this story, that after Pat's set, he was having dinner backstage, and he was listening to us as we were doing our set. And the promoter asked him, "So how do you like this band?" And he said, "Oh yeah, they're really good. And I especially like the way the percussion player and the drummer played together, like super tight."
Oh, he thought there was 2.
Yeah, he thought it was 2 people. And then the promoter said, like, no, but it's just one guy. And like, what? And then he stood up and went to check me out.
Sure.
And I think from that moment, he was like, oh, you know, the wheels started turning. And then on the same tour, a couple of weeks after, we were playing in London, and he was also playing in London, Pat. And after his gig, he came to our gig because we were playing later in a club. And, you know, he stayed for the whole time. And then he sent me a really long email saying all the things he had liked from the gig. And then it was almost like a job questionnaire. It was really bizarre,
right.
You know. So do you consider yourself somebody that, you know, only plays this kind of music? Are you open to playing all the kinds of music? You know, are you comfortable being on the road for a long time? And I was like, wow, this is kind of weird, but, you know, it's cool. I
Sure.
mean, this is Pat Metheny writing to me. And then at the end it said, you know, what are you doing next Thursday? Do you want to jam? And I'm like, yeah,
Sure.
I'm free Thursday. And then we got together in his studio that he used to have around Times Square back then.
Okay.
And we just jammed like for 4 hours, just him and me. And that's how it all started.
Awesome. Good
Yeah.
story. Good story.
Yeah.
So that's been a long gig for you, right? I mean, you're doing your solo stuff pretty a lot right now, right? You're concentrating on that. But are you still playing with him on the side, or is that kind of fizzled out, or how?
No. I mean, the thing about the way Pat tours is that it's usually on or off.
Okay.
You know, it's not like we're working all the time.
Okay.
So last year we worked like, you know, 8-9 months out of the year. And this year, you know.
Pretty open.
Yes, pretty
Okay.
open. So this year I've been concentrating on just doing my own thing. You know,
That's
we've been touring. We did a spring tour, and now we're doing a summer tour, and then the whole fall we're doing stuff. So.
Okay. Well, let's get into your solo
Sure.
career and your solo records and stuff. Before I ask you that, how much, because you compose a lot of your own music, how much did the studying of the melodic instruments, piano and other things you did as earlier on in your career as you're growing up, how much did that influence and help you in your composing of jazz and that stuff? I mean, is it more than just understanding? Is it a feel thing? Is it you really know what's going on? I mean, how did that help?
I mean, some stuff obviously is, you know, theoretical
Right.
and practical.
Sure.
You know, because I can play enough so that I can write. And then all the jazz harmony and counterpoint and arranging that I studied at Berkeley, that obviously helped. But I think really what helped me the most, and you know this firsthand, is working with amazing
Being
people.
out there, yeah.
Working with Pat and Danilo, David Sanchez, Chick Corea, Michael Brecker, Gary Burton. I mean, all these guys that
Serious
yeah,
players,
I mean, it's like that's the best school.
That's the education.
And compositionally, you get to talk to them about their tunes. They get to talk. They talk to you about their tunes because they wrote them and they want a certain thing from you as a drummer. You get to see the music. You get to play it. You get to talk about it. So it's the most complete education. So for a long time, I was a very shy composer. I didn't think my stuff was up to that level where I could present it to really good guys and they were not gonna laugh in my face, But I was always writing my little things. And then at one point, I guess making your first record is like, okay, I'm ready to have my first child, It's something you feel. And then I really wanted to do it and I wanted to do something special, so I asked Pat if he would play on it, and Chick Corea if they would play on it, and then the rest of the guys is David Sanchez, Chris Potter, and Scott Colley. And Pat and Chick, not only they agreed to play on it, but they asked me if it would be cool if they wrote something for it. So I was like,
fantastic, yeah.
Please,
And what year was that first record?
That was 2000, we recorded 2006,
okay.
Came out 2007. And that was obviously a big milestone for me to put out my first record and then get over the shyness of composing. But the weird thing is that even though I write everything on the piano, that band had no piano. It was just 2 horns, 2 saxophones, bass and drums. And then Chick, he wrote the couple of tunes that we played, and then Pat wrote the tune that he played on. So, even though I wrote everything on the piano, there was no piano, which is now I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And then my second record was also like that. It was a live record.
Right.
It was an extension of that. We had really developed the music by that time, and it was very open. The tunes were short. And they were more like a guideline or an excuse to improvise.
Expand,
yeah. But then on my third record, I really started, wanting to expand my writing and just write stuff that was, had more depth to it. And of course, there's improvisation and there's all the elements that I love from jazz,
right.
But also the compositions are a lot more intricate.
I gotcha.
And from that record, which is called New Life, that was my third record. From then on, I really got a kick out of just writing and sitting down and trying to figure out the storytelling,
sure.
That needs to be done for a tune to have some emotional impact. And so I put out, after New Life, the record that is out right now is called 3x3, which is like an all-star record that my
really
record
cool
company.
Stuff on there.
Oh, thank you.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, my record company was like, how about an all-star record? And sometimes all-star records sound horrible because there's all this egos going on, and musically, sometimes it's just not the best chemistry. But I thought, okay, if we record 3 separate trios with guys that I either played a little bit or that I would love to play with, and I haven't had the chance to, and to have the chance also to write music especially for them, I thought that would be fantastic for me.
Sure.
The record company loved the idea, and so on the first record, it's a double album. On the first record is Brad Meldau and Matt Brewer, who has been the bass player for my band for a while now. Then the other record is the other 2 trios, which is John Scofield and Christine McBride, and the other one is Joe Lovano and John Patitucci. So you have a piano trio, guitar trio, and saxophone trio. So to me, those have been the most important trios that I've played in throughout my life. Right. So I wanted to kind of pay tribute to those configurations.
So when you play, are you touring this record or are you promoting that? I mean, I was going to ask, I'm curious, how would you do that with 3 different kinds of trios playing with your band live?
Yeah, I mean, the idea from the beginning was for it to be an in-between record for my band, Migration, because New Life was my third record. And then Since I knew I was going to be on tour with Pat all of last year, I said, okay, maybe I'll put out that record, the 3x3, and that's what it's called, during my tour with Pat, so that my name is still out there as a leader. And that record, I was not planning on touring it at all because of 3 trios. How are you going to do that? And it was supposed to be an in-between record that I would put out in between projects of my band Migration. So the last CD that we're putting out, which is coming out in June, that's a 1 hour long composition.
Yeah, I read about that.
I mean, I really wanted to give it a try, what it would be like to write the equivalent of a novel instead of short stories, because when you're doing 8, 9 tunes in a record, you have to write concise tunes, stories, if you will. And then this way, it would be like writing a novel and developing your characters over an hour instead of over 8 minutes.
I got a question about that. I'm a little curious. I play a lot of progressive rock, and we have a lot of long songs and that style of music. And you have to kind of find your themes and kind of revisit those themes throughout the extent of the song. So how do you do that in an hour-long song in your kind of jazz setting? Is there certain melodies that kind of reoccur throughout the thing and kind of come back and bring you to the front?
That was exactly the idea. It's like, again, going back to the novel concept. You have your characters and you develop them over the whole book. So that's what I wanted to do. Certain themes, melodies, you recognize, hopefully, later in the song in a completely different way. Different groove or different harmonization, different tempo, different treatment, different orchestration. But the idea was, it's called the Meridian Suite because I've always kind of been intrigued by the concept of meridians, this imaginary lines that cross the planet, the celestial sphere, and our bodies, and our minds when it comes to chakras and all this kind of new agey stuff. But all these lines kind of intertwine in different ways. And I started realizing that, the tune was doing that. All these different lines, motifs, ideas were intertwining throughout, the whole composition, which lasts over an hour. So, and then to cap it all off, I started writing that 2 years ago, the intro to the whole thing, that I didn't know it was going to turn into this. I started writing it in Meridian, Mississippi.
Okay.
Yeah, so then when I started writing again last year, I was like, I remember there was this intro that I wrote that I really liked, and I looked it up in my computer, and I liked it again, and I started building from that. Okay. And I kept looking at Meridian, and Meridian, and Meridian. I was like, man, it really sounds cool. So it was the Meridian Suite, and then I started putting it all together with the concept behind it.
So for a thing like that too, is it completely kind of written out, or is there open sections throughout the recording?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both because it still all falls under the umbrella of jazz.
Okay, so there are moments where you guys get to
but there's a lot of written material.
So it's focused too.
Yeah,
okay.
and I'm using voice a lot more, which is my fiancée, Tana Alexa, is a wonderful singer. She's my muse in a way. So I'm using her a lot as an instrument, and also there's a section with lyrics. And then the other guys are Seamus Blake on saxophone and Iwi, and John Screet on piano, and Matt Brewer on bass, and as a guest Adam Rogers on guitar. Sure. And it's a lot more orchestral. It's it was a big project. I think after this I might have to go simple again.
Do you like being a band leader? You like kind of corralling the troops together and all that stuff?
I mean, it's hard. It's really hard, and times are tough. Yeah. But I think this is my time to do it. I really enjoy playing my own music, and the last few tours we've done, we've gotten great response.
You traveling all over the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we just finished a tour that started in Canada, then Mexico, Japan, and then all over Europe.
Nice.
Now we're going back to Europe and Canada and the States, and we're trying to do as much as we can this year.
That's fantastic. I wish you all the best and all the luck in the world with that kind of thing. How do you see, since you're deep in it, the jazz world, the style of jazz music in today's culture? I mean, especially in the States here, we're inundated with pop and rock all the time, and jazz is kind of an afterthought for a lot of, everyday people, not necessarily players, but How do you, since you're in it, how do you feel about the state of jazz music?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was reading this article not that long ago that said that jazz has become the least popular music in the United States. And, I saw that, I read that, and, there were some really good points about it. And then I wrote this Facebook rant, that I couldn't help myself. Because people were complaining like, oh no, this is crap, this is not reality. Pop has inundated, our culture, and the lowest common denominator is what's, making people, just dumber and dumber and dumber. And what I said is like, look, I think we also have to take some responsibility from what's happening. And my rant was about, people complain about the attention span of people nowadays. And yes, of course it's shorter. That has changed a lot since the internet, has invaded our lives. But we have to adapt. So if I'm playing in a band and the saxophone player is taking a solo so long that it's boring me, how do I expect for the audience not to be bored? So we have to take more into consideration our audiences. Yeah. We cannot be as self-complacent as, okay, I'm so good that whatever I do, people are going to like it. That's not the way it should work. And I really admire Pat Metheny for really trying to put a very good show whenever we play.
You're there to entertain, right?
Yeah, and people pay good money to see you. They had to get a babysitter and get on the subway or their car and put on some nice clothes and pay some good money to see you. So they deserve a good show. And a lot of jazz bands that I've been in, they're amazing musicians, incredible musicians, but they don't even know what they're going to play after the first tune. Like, we play the first tune and boom, we're done, and people are clapping, people are going crazy, and like, what should we play now? And then it takes a minute to decide, and I'm like, I just can't have any of that. Sure. So in my band, we really try to put a show together that is going to keep people entertained. And if it doesn't keep me entertained, how am I supposed to keep people entertained? And also, I think contemporary jazz sometimes has gotten so complicated, so brainy, that I can't even get into it. And I'm somebody that has played really complicated music for a big part of my life. And a lot of times I don't understand it. It says nothing to me. There's no strong melodic factor. It's so open and ethereal that I can't find the groove. So I think we don't have to pander to the audience, but there's nothing wrong with making it good and accessible at the same time. And it can be done, because a lot of people think that accessibility means that you're going to make it dumb it down for people. And I don't think that's the case at all. Duke Ellington was popular music. Yeah. Everybody loved their music. Everybody loved his music, and there were some of the greatest compositions ever written. So it can be done. Stevie Wonder. Oh, yeah. So I think as jazz musicians, we have to be a little bit more aware of that.
Cool, very good answer.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Quick question: since you're touring and your band's gonna come out, do you make your way to the Midwest at all? Are you in this area at all, playing live?
We're playing Indianapolis. We're playing the Jazz Kitchen in the fall. Yeah.
Okay, I have to keep that one in mind.
Yeah.
Jazz Kitchen, Indianapolis, in the fall. All right. So in closing this interview, let's get a little bit into your gear. You've been playing Yamaha for how long?
I started playing unofficially since I was at Berkeley. Oh, okay. I bought a Yamaha Power V Special back then. It was a used kit, that I just didn't know you had to have a kit when you went to Berkeley. So I showed up at Berkeley and like, hey, where are the drum kits? And back then there were no kits. Okay. So then I had to go to this secondhand store and buy a Yamaha Power V Special, which sounded great, right. But it was really cheap, affordable. And since then I was playing Yamaha. And then I started playing officially, through an endorsement in 2001 when I did my first record with Pat Metheny.
Okay. And what do you think of the drums?
I mean,
they have such a history, Yamaha drums. They've been around a long time. They have a great sound.
And for a long time, some of my favorite drummers always played Yamaha too. So instantaneously it became like, Yamaha. I just loved the sight of them, and all the people that were playing them was a huge reason why I wanted to play them. Sure. And then, of course, me playing them, I was like, these drums are amazing. They sound great. And Yamaha's changed a lot in terms of the models they've been putting out.
Sure.
So my first kit was a Maple Custom Absolute. And then they started making the Maple Custom Absolute Nouveau with these kinds of lugs that you can pull out. And it's just so easy to change heads, so easy to tune. They really stayed in tune. And they always had this warm quality, so easy to tune. Yeah. And the good thing also for me is that a lot of times when I travel, I cannot take my drums. So they are pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere. That's a good thing. Yeah.
That's a great thing. And that's one of the things that I think keep my playing consistent and my sound consistent no matter where I am and where I'm touring.
Cool. Very cool.
And the other thing I have to say, sometimes I have to play other kits when there's no Yamaha on the road. And there's pretty much every company has a very good sounding kit nowadays, like top of the line. But the hardware, that's a completely different ballgame. Sure. I'm not going to mention names, but there are some companies that sometimes I'm like, who designed this thing? Not a drummer, obviously. And that's one thing that I think Yamaha has gotten down from the beginning so well, the hardware.
The hardware is great.
So user-friendly. I mean, I played kits where the toms are so far away from you and the mechanism doesn't allow you for them to come closer to you. I'm like, how can anybody design this thing? And they sound good too, but Yamaha, I think they have that side of things completely together, and it really can make a difference of an hour or half an hour in terms of setup time.
And the feel of when you're actually behind the kit, just the feel and the vibe that you get with that when you're comfortable in that zone, it's good.
Yep.
I totally agree. You've been a Zildjian player for a long time?
Yeah, Zildjian actually, they gave me my first endorsement when I was in school at Berkeley. Okay. They saw me playing in this recital, and John de Christopher, who he's not with Zildjian anymore, but he saw me. I was like, are you interested? I'm like, man, Zildjian has been my go-to symbol from the beginning. Right. So of course I was thrilled. And same thing, Zildjian has gone through many different changes since I've been in the company. And also musically, I've been through a lot of changes myself. Right. So in the beginning, I was more into, the brighter sounding cymbals. I used to love the K Custom was like my main ride. And then when I started getting more into jazz and started getting more into darker sounds, then they started coming up with the Constantinople series, which I still use a lot. Now they put out the K-ropes.
Those are nice.
Those are amazing. Yeah. And of course, the good thing about being a Zildjian endorser as well is that if you run into an amazing old K or a vintage cymbal, you get to play it too because it's still a Zildjian. Sure. So I have a couple of those, and they've also made some amazing prototypes for me of crashes, and they're making me a couple of rides. And when I started playing with Pat Metheny, Pat is famous for really liking his flat rides, in his music, and Zildjian makes a custom flat ride, which I love, but they only used to make it, or I think they still only make it on a 20. Okay. But it was a little too small for what I needed with Pat, so then they made me two amazing 22-inch A customs, and everybody asked me, like, what is that, and they just sound amazing, and they're just so consistent.
Sure.
And I get to go to the factory and hand pick everything, or they send me stuff when I ask them, and it's been a great relationship from the beginning.
Very, very cool. And you're a Remo drumhead player, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, do you normally use just ambassadors on your kit?
Coated ambassadors.
Single ply?
Yeah.
Kind of keeps the drums open and.
Yeah, I really like the open sound, and they have a wide range in terms of if you tune them high, they sing really well. If you tune them low, they have a lot of depth. Sure. And again, I think Yamaha and Remo together, they work amazingly well.
Nice.
Yeah, and then in terms of the sticks that I play.
You have your own stick, don't you?
Yeah, my signature Siljan stick, which has a barrel tip, which has been amazingly, effective when it comes to a lot of right cymbal playing.
What size about?
It's like a 7A.
Okay, so it's pretty thin.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we put a little bit more meat on it. On purpose, because when I started designing the stick with Siljan, I was doing a lot of gigs with Pat Metheny, where we play some very soft music, and then we play like speed metal, volume. Right. So I wanted something that would not break when I was playing it loud, but that when I was playing it soft didn't prove too heavy on my hands. So I think we found a really nice balance.
Fantastic. What kind of music are you listening to these days? What are you into, aside from your world that you play in all the time?
Well, there's this band from Australia that I haven't been able to stop listening for a few weeks now. They just put out an amazing record out, and they had a record out before, and then they put EPs every now and then, a couple of tunes here, a couple of tunes there. Hiatus Coyote.
Okay.
They're from Australia, and man, they have a really, really amazing thing going on.
What style of music?
It's, they call it future soul.
Okay.
Which I think is very accurate, because it has a lot of soul elements, a lot of R&B elements, but then it has all this keyboards and rhythmic things going on. The girl, the singer, her name is Napalm, and is very appropriate because she's burning. It's unbelievable. She writes, I think, most of the stuff, and she's got an amazing voice, amazing personality. So I've been really into them. And I've been checking a lot of electronic music as well. There's this guy in London. His name is Bibio. Does really interesting stuff. Little Dragon, there's another band that does really cool stuff. So, that's mostly what I've been listening to. Just I like really well-produced records, and that's why we're talking a little earlier about Tears for Fears, that of course you played with them. And that's always been one of my first bands. I keep listening to them all the time because those records are so well done and so well produced. And the tunes are great, and they're recorded so well, and they've been one of my favorite bands for forever.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming here. You have a performance tonight. You're going to be playing here in the theater. You did a master class yesterday, so we're very happy to have you here at Sweetwater, and please come back anytime.
Oh, it's been a blast.
And we'll definitely come check you out in Indianapolis.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll keep you posted.
The Jazz Kitchen, right?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Nick DiVirgilio.